Nearly 200 nations meeting in Scotland agreeing on a compromise to reduce emissions and promising to create more robust climate plans in the future. But many activists arguing the deal still comes up short. ABC's Mary Alice Parks is in Washington with more. Mary Alice, good morning.
Good morning. 2 weeks ago, President Biden stood there in Glasgow on the world stage and said the eyes of history were upon them, that the conference needed to be a pivotal moment where leaders decided to save the planet. Now, after 2 weeks of intense negotiations, all of the nations gathered there at the summit. 200 nations nearly agreed to this new agreement. And it says that the world is committed to fighting climate change, that they are going to work as hard as they can to slash carbon dioxide emissions to try to prevent the very worst outcomes of global warming. The new pact asked countries specifically to come back next year with new pledges for this decade. And it asked richer nations to at least double funds to help poor countries both transition to cleaner energy and adapt to the effects of climate change that they are already feeling. Now, on the one hand, some experts say the agreement was an important next step to keep the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement alive. John Kerry, the U.S. Special Envoy for Climate, said that at least countries were raising their ambitions. But look, there was immense frustration with this pact, too, because most experts say that the final pact just did not meet the high stakes of this moment. For example, while it says that most nations would need to cut their greenhouse gas emissions nearly in half this decade, in order for the most dire consequences of climate change to be avoided, the pact just did not provide a clear roadmap for doing that or any mechanisms for keeping nations accountable. And a lot of upset, too, specifically that India at the last minute was able to lobby and soften some of the language around phasing out coal. But the big question now, the big challenge now is for leaders like President Biden to go home from this conference and actually implement policies. Now, our new ABC News Washington Post poll, this is really interesting, shows that 70% of Americans say that the government should be working to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But obviously, a lot of President Biden's climate change ideas are in his social spending package, and he has not yet been able to get that one over the finish line. Whit?
Yeah, we saw the challenges with getting other nations on board as well. Mary Alice, thank you so much. So as world leaders negotiated climate policy overseas, here at home, many Americans are focused on the economy. So let's bring in ABC News political director Rick Klein. Rick, good morning. It's always great to see you. I want to go back to that new ABC News Washington Post poll out this morning, and it's not good for President Biden and the Democrats. Biden's approval rating down to 41%. That's a new low. And among the key factors we were talking about the economy, with inflation soaring, 70% say it's in bad shape. This presents major challenges for Democrats ahead of the 2022 midterms, doesn't it?
This is a devastating poll for Joe Biden and the Democratic Party, and it paints a portrait of a party that appears disconnected from people's lives. Broad perception, more than 62% say that Democrats are not standing for people like them. And it's an interesting week to set this up with, because we're a year out from the midterms. We're also just a day away from President Biden signing that infrastructure bill. You'll have one of the rarest sights in Washington, a bipartisan signing ceremony, Democrats and Republicans together. But in this poll, we asked people, would you rather see the Democrat or the Republican win in your district? The Republican candidate has a 51-41 edge among registered voters. We've been asking this question for 40 years, Whit, and we have never seen Republicans with this wide a margin in that so-called generic ballot question.
Wow. And with the infrastructure bill, too, many Americans won't notice the impacts for some years now. I do want to switch gears, though, and ask you about Steve Bannon. A federal grand jury indicted him on 2 counts of contempt of Congress. Is this a game changer for the Select Committee's investigation on the January 6th Capitol riot?
This is potentially a very big deal, and really only tangentially has to do with Steve Bannon, who we expect to appear in court early this week. He may not cooperate. He may have to go to jail as a result of it. But the bottom line is that this shows that the Justice Department is willing to walk alongside the Select Committee, back them up when they go after big names. There are more than 30 subpoenas that have been issued. We've got other bold-faced names in the Trump orbit, like his former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, who right now are not cooperating. You couple this with a court ruling last week that said that President Trump doesn't have executive privilege over the documents and the testimony that others might give. And this says that this January 6th committee is going to get major backing from the Department of Justice in getting the answers it wants.
A lot more to come on this. Rick Klein, as always, thank you so much. We do appreciate it. Of course, stay tuned for this week, a special episode celebrating the 40th anniversary of the program.
From ABC News in Washington, This Week with David Brinkley.
Good morning. We're glad to have you with us. we have a new Sunday program for you, which we hope you will find useful.
The show itself is supposed to be a forum, and what this week has always been is a forum for civic, civil debate based on facts, to hold public figures accountable, hold politicians and administration officials, members of Congress accountable for the decisions they're making every day in our name.
We are looking forward to it. Extraordinary history made on the program. Also on this week, George Stephanopoulos goes one-on-one with White House National Economic Council Director Brian Deese and Republican Senator John Barrasso on the state of the economy, plus exclusive reporting from our John Caro for his new book, Betrayal.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Lots of great stuff here. So go on, click the subscribe button right over here to get more of awesome videos and content from GMA every day, anytime. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the morning on GMA.